everybody, to the Tuesday edition of the Daily Cheat Sheet. I think what's on the front of everybody's mind right now is what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Israel, and President Trump's response to this. And I'm seeing extreme overreaction from people on the right to his reaction, and it's reminiscent to those of the people on the left. There's no difference between what he's saying right now to Kim Jong-un and what he did to a lot of foreign leaders in speaking with a big stick than what he's doing right now, and the reactions, Golan, we're getting from the right. So just remind me of the reactions we're witnessing from people on the left.
You know, you say from the right, although what I'm seeing is just reactions. One of the things that I keep noticing is that people who at one point said something that was, let's say, pro-America or anti-Iran or any of those things have now suddenly switched their position because now it's about hating the Jews more than it is about anything else. I don't mean to make everything about the Jews. It's kind of what they're doing, so I'm just responding to it. And over again, I'm having flashbacks where I go and I look at old tweets by people, like the one Mend read yesterday from Candace Owens, where she's like, shame on any of you leftists who are supporting Iran as they go through their genocidal. And then 5 minutes later, she's like, man, poor Iran. Can we take care of these people? The Jews are so mean. It's not just a right or a left thing. It's surprising how many people from, again, the quote unquote liberal side of things are so illiberal. And it's surprising how many people from the pro-West side, supposedly, quote unquote, are suddenly ready to throw the West under the bus. So I don't even know what to say. I wish I could be shocked. I'm more just disappointed.
Mend, there's this great lie. We discussed this yesterday going around. Candace Owens has spread it and it goes viral. And once somebody spreads something, America has never had troops on the ground in Israel. I don't even believe they've ever offered the Air Force to Israel. So that's never been on the table. And Trump has sort of intimated it, but he hasn't confirmed that he's doing it or said that he's doing it. And you're witnessing this reaction that is far beyond the words.
You know, if you break it down as to what are we actually talking about when we talk about Trump getting out of forever wars and the risks that this war poses for the America First crew. So what George Bush did in Iraq, I mean, we sent boots in and we kept those people there for over 10 years. Same thing in Afghanistan. We're not talking about doing that in Iran. Iran is a country that has been sponsoring terrorism, that has American blood on its hands. America has never put the boots on the ground inside of Israel in a protection fashion to help protect Israel from anything. And I'm not talking about, THAAD or Patriot batteries. I'm talking about guys actually fighting, right? So America has never joined Israel in a war where they have to send their soldiers into another country to fight on behalf of Israel. And nobody's asking America to do that. And actually, I am against America doing that. I do not want that to happen. But if we're looking at Iran and a country that has been consistently attacking American interests, American assets, and American servicemen, since 1979, when they took our embassy hostage, and they haven't stopped. So we're talking about ending a war. This is ending a war. Now, if America drops some bunker busters from a B-52, does that mean that we're embroiling ourselves in another 10-year war? Or does that just mean that we're smacking the hyena that's been nipping at our tail for the last 30 years? We need to smack him down. That's the way it works in the wild. When there's a bully, you knock his teeth out, and then he stops being a bully. So that's what the Israelis are asking for here. They're saying, hey, we need that strong firepower to come in and finish this thing once and for all. And nobody's going to send boots in, besides maybe the Israelis with some special commando units. But nobody's sending American boots into Iran. What is going to happen when the regime falls? That's a whole other story. Only half that country are Persians. There's a lot of Arabs there. There's Baluch, there's Kurds, there's a lot of people, and that country could break up and it could turn into another Libya. We don't know. But the risk of that happening is probably way less than it was for Iraq or for Libya, because Iran is a very well-educated society. The masses of the people that live there are sick and tired of this Iranian Islamic regime that has done nothing but make them all destitute. Their sanctions has crushed them. They are broken. They are ready for change. And then you do the Masa Amini protests. I mean, we saw them killing their own children, and people have risen up. So the people are ready to do this.
Well said. And Golan, I keenly remember President Trump dropping a Moab on ISIS in Afghanistan, sending a missile into Syria, and Tucker was apoplectic when that happened, and totally wiping out ISIS, and nobody had a problem with that. This double standard is really extremely telling. And what do you have to say about that, Golan Ramras?
I think the double standard is glaring, and I echo Men's point that is dropping a bomb, putting boots on the ground. Boots on the ground is not a fucking metaphor. It means boots are on the fucking ground. And if you're dropping a giant bomb from the sky, then that doesn't fucking qualify because words have definitions. And for anyone who is saying, oh, these poor Iranians, or the poor IRGC, or the poor Ayatollah, everything that Men pointed out is true. They have been doing this forever. And the people who were like, no, 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 that was Hezbollah, or that was Hamas, or that was the Houthis, or that... Iran is the master of indirect warfare. They have been doing this over and over and over again for decades. They almost never attack directly. Let's just forget Iran. Some guy is financing, he's funding, he's arming, he's training, he's controlling a group of people who show up at your house every day, beat the shit out of your family, steal your kids, and murder your pets. Are you allowed to go after the guy who did all that? Or do you only go after the people who actually physically were in the house? I think it's obvious. So the fact that anyone has a problem with it isn't just a double standard. It's fucking retarded.
Well said, Mend. I find this extremely ironic that almost all of the Gulf states, almost all of the people in the Abraham Accords have said little or nothing. Syria has opened up its airspace. The German Chancellor, Friedrich Marx, said if Iran wants to surrender, destroying its nuclear program is the only way. And quote unquote, this is from Germany. This is the dirty work that Israel is doing for all of us. I can only say I have the greatest respect for the Israelis having the courage to do this, he said. So Israel is getting the support from the Saudis, the UAE, Egypt, every single one of these people, but people in America. What the hell has happened, man?
Again, I mean, if you look at what the people in America are talking about, they have no idea what they're talking about. We're not talking about getting into a war. First of all, Iran attacked us. Let's talk about the Beirut bombing where we lost 220-something Marines. I mean, again and again and again, they've been attacking us. So this is not us getting into a war. As I've said again and again, this is us getting out of a war. This is us finishing the war that they started. And we're not talking about putting boots on the ground. So dropping a bomb on the people that have been attacking us since 1979 does not mean that we're getting into a war. So these people, the Tucker Carlsons, have no idea what they're actually saying. And Trump actually put out a tweet smacking Tucker down, saying this idiot doesn't know. Truth, whatever. Yeah, fine. It's just saying that this moron doesn't know what he's talking about. And it's true. He does not know what he's talking about. Nobody's asking for America to get into a war. What we're asking for is that America stand up for Americans and smack this hyena down once and for all. Finish it.
Golan, to his point, and this is the whole point of the show, we do not report on the rumors. And that is everything that is being... So we're witnessing two types of reporting right now. Libel, so that's one rumor. And then the other rumor is of what Trump's going to do. I mean, let's all not forget, he called Kim Jong-un Little Rocket Man in front of the UN and maybe also the State of the Union. And everybody was screaming, oh, my God, we're going to go to North Korea. He shut him down. He sent a missile into Syria. Everybody was like, oh, my God, Assad's going to do this. Assad was gassing his own people with mustard gas. He sent that in and he shut Assad down. And look where Assad is right now. Hiding out in Russia, Golan.
Absolutely. Look, we keep saying it, peace through strength. It's what Trump promised before he got into office. He's gotten into office, and he has been doing just that across the board. And I think that this is a perfect example of not only peace through strength, but peace through strategic partnerships, peace through letting other people do your dirty work for you, as Chancellor Merz said in Germany. Peace through making sure that the bad actors of this world, instead of appeasing them or letting them have a path to something you don't want them to have, or finding half measures about someone getting nuclear power, how about peace through taking down the villains? You know, I am just trying to imagine an action movie, my background, where John McClane doesn't shoot Alan Rickman and toss him out a window, but instead says, hey, how about we put together a framework in which you have to wait 4 to 5 years before you come back and steal what's in the vault? Doesn't even make sense, does it? So, no, I think he's doing it right. I think he's done it right. And I think he will continue to.
Well said. Mend, I want to go on to this thing that also nobody is actually reporting on, is the fact that Israel has taken extreme measures with what they're doing with Iran. And it's amazing how they're not being applauded. The death toll in Iran is negligible compared to the way the missiles have landed in Iran, as opposed to the way the missiles are landing in Israel. And now I know nobody gives a crap about the Israel part. But the part, remember with Hamas, it was all unproportional. The deaths, unproportional. The deaths have been negligible, men.
It's funny. I heard some Iranian broadcaster this morning talking, and they're using the same language. Indiscriminate bombing. They're doing indiscriminate bombing. Here's the deal, is that of the 400 intercontinental ballistic missiles that Iran fired at Israel so far, if they landed on their targets, there would have been over 1 million dead Israelis. The only reason that they didn't is because Israel has an Iron Dome defense system that shot most of them out of the skies, and the Americans and the Saudis have helped them shoot some of these down. Iran does not have an Iron Dome system. And there's only been 127 or so dead in Iran, and most of them are elite generals. So you look at the way these two countries fight a war. Israel will not get credit for this, but this is the way they do it. Israel does surgical, precise military strikes. Yes, there are some casualties sometimes. Some civilians get mixed in with the actual targets that they're going after. But for the most part, we're talking about less than 1,000 dead when this is a full-on raging war. And on the Israeli side, there would have been 1 million dead had they not had a protection system. Israel has a bomb shelter for every single citizen, no matter of your race or religion. Iran does not. They only have it for the IRGC people. Israel has an Iron Dome system to shoot missiles out of the sky. The Iranians do not. And the Iranians attempted to murder over 1 million Israelis, and the Israelis did not go indiscriminate and bomb. These people are just fools. It's blatantly obvious with the results, just as it is in Gaza, how the Israelis take active measures to protect civilian lives. One last thing. In Gaza, if Israel was indiscriminately bombing, the war would have been over on October 8th. They would have flattened that entire place in one day.
Well said. And to his point, Golan, what people also are not bringing up is that Israel is defending at least 1.5 million Arabs right now as these bombs, as these ballistic missiles are hitting Israel. The Iron Dome, it's not like the Iron Dome isn't, and David's Arrow and all that other, all the other systems they have are like just region, are just like by city. They're protecting the West Bank. They're protecting Gaza. They're protecting everywhere, Golan. And nobody is bringing this up right now.
You know, I hate to say this. They are bringing it up, but they're bringing it up under false pretenses to make Israel look bad. CNN ran one of the most disgusting pieces I have ever seen just yesterday. They were talking about the Arab Israelis, the women that were killed. It was a mother and 3 daughters, I believe. And CNN framed the incident as evidence of bomb shelter discrimination and inequality in the country. They were suggesting that the tragedy illustrated some kind of systemic bias against the Arab Israeli communities, using all the words BLM taught us to use to make someone look like the bad guy. CNN had a lack of evidence for any of this, and all it took was just a tiny little bit of digging, just a little bit, that says you're ignoring the broader context and you're lying by omission. Actually, 50% of Israel doesn't have easy access to a bomb shelter within their home because the buildings were built prior to the time when that was required. So that is a reality across the board. They tried to paint it as if the Arabs in Israel were being discriminated against in terms of them not having them in their homes. It's a lie. And so you're absolutely right. Not only are they protecting everyone with the Iron Dome, everybody, Jews, Christians, Arabs, Muslims, everybody across the board has access to the exact same shelters, the exact same protections, and it is something that Israel prides itself on, and is part of why Israel is one of the most pluralistic societies that exists on earth. The fact that Iran was lobbing missiles indiscriminately all over Israel, and you saw the deaths of Jews and Christians and Druze and Bedouin and Arabs and Muslims, tells you everything you need to know. And if you don't see it, it's because you don't want to, you anti-Semite fuck.
Don't hold back.
I just have to also add both of you have served, I have not. And there's this constant theme where people say, and I get it, where people say we're warmongers because if you didn't serve, and Trump brought this up himself, and it's the old line that, be prepared if you haven't faced the gun. I get that. Not everybody, I'm 49 years old, so right now I am not in serving shape, but I gladly would have. Now, take that out of the equation. There's right and there's wrong. And I keep on asking people, Mend, should we not have gone into World War II? And nobody could answer that question. They go around the answer, but they're not actually answering that question.
Look, this is an unprecedented time in our history where the entire Middle East is getting reshaped. What we've seen time and time again, these little jackals, these tiny little hyenas are nipping at the lion, and it's either America or the West. And they get away with it because of weak leadership in the West. They just allow them to continuously get away with it, which emboldens that little hyena to do more and more. What they need to do is have their teeth knocked out, and that is what's happening. You're seeing Israel finally saying enough is enough. And thank God we have strong leadership in America now, too, that is going along with it and saying, you know what? No ceasefire. A ceasefire won't accomplish anything right now. Exactly. Iran is reaching out to all of the regional allies and rivals, including Saudi Arabia, and they are not friends. And they are asking, please put pressure, get Israel to stop this bombing campaign, stop killing our leaders and our generals. Not going to happen. Trump came out and said that is not how this ends this time. You had 60 days. You ran the clock out. Now you're going to suffer the consequences. And the consequences are you need to disband and completely dismantle your nuclear program. That is how this ends. Same thing like the war in Gaza. That war could end today if they release the hostages and they dismantled Hamas. In Iran, you dismantle your nuclear program. We don't care what leadership takes shape, whether the people of Iran rise up and Gaddafi their leader, or if they continue supporting this guy. I was advocating for taking the guy out. I think it would take a lot of the wind out of the sails of all the little cronies that follow this leader. As Golan said the other day, you chop off the top and then all their little minions fall, like the video games, right? You do that. I advocated for taking this guy out. They're not doing that. Khomeiни's going to say and live for another day. That's fine. But that nuclear program must come to an end. And the only way to do it is complete capitulation. Iran needs to surrender, and that's how the war ends.
Well said. And, Golan, it's really an abomination. J.D. Vance came out with a truth today and a tweet today explaining why Trump is doing what Trump is doing. And I find it amazing, especially within his own brand or his own base, whatever you want to call it, that J.D. Vance has to come out and defend somebody who has done nothing but support his base, stand up for this great country, and try to get it back on track, and has never done pretty much anything he did not say he was going to do. That he had to have J.D. Vance come out and say that, it's embarrassing for the MAGA movement. It's embarrassing.
It is ludicrous. Forget that he had to come out and say it on behalf of somebody or behalf of the movement. The vice president of the United States just had to put out tweets or truths and had to talk to groups and had to make statements saying, hey guys, don't worry, the president's okay. He's showing a restraint. He's being all right. He's not overstepping his bounds. What the hell is this? It honestly was embarrassing, not just internally within the country, to know that we had a vice president that felt the need to do that, or a president that suddenly felt like he needed some kind of tacit permission, even though he's not asking for anybody's permission to do what he's doing. But it also made us look weak on the world stage.
It's a great point.
Which is, obviously something that, has happened many times, but usually it happens because other people decide to get hyperbolic. People decide to, like Men pointed out the other day when Trump was telling people in the last G7 that he was in and they were walking out of the room laughing at him and all of that. Okay, that's them trying to create a narrative. Here, we created the narrative ourselves, which is just counterintuitive. I'm very happy that J.D. Vance, who kind of semi-represents the party of isolationists right now, is at least publicly embracing Trump's Iran posture, right? He's kind of, again, carefully backing that military pressure, but not boots on the ground, right? May decide, just to quote, he may decide he needs to take further action to end Iranian enrichment. He may. And that decision ultimately belongs to the president, which also makes it look like he's trying not to be culpable for the decision. It's a lot of stuff here that makes him look weak, in addition to him making the president look weak.
Man, the final thing I want to get into, because as I said, both of you, I want to get your equal opinions on this because it's extremely important. Both, like I said, both of you have served and both of you have incredible acumen. And if you're watching, especially Fox News, it's really interesting to see who has what generals to speak about this conflict. So you're watching Jesse Waters have certain generals and maybe Laura Ingraham, and then you have Hannity having different generals. And there's this guy named Daniel Davis who Jesse Waters had on, and he's talking about all of the mistakes that could happen from an event like this. And this is where people are getting their source from, is from generals who we have no idea who they are, essentially. They've written a book, and we're not getting opinions. We're getting camp opinions. We're getting tribal opinions right now.
Look, it's not that complicated to figure this out. On the one hand, you have a regime that is vowed to annihilate the Jewish people, and they chant death to America every day, and they've taken action to kill Americans. A lot of American blood is on their hands. And on the other side, you have the ability, an opportunity right now that was created by the Israelis, that we could end their nuclear program. Those are the binary choices that we have. On the one side, you have a regime that's sprinting for a nuclear bomb. Whether they'll get it in 2 days or 2 months or 2 years, it doesn't matter. They are trying to get that bomb, and they want to cause havoc to Americans and Israelis and the West. And on the other side, we have this rare opportunity right now, go in and end it. What is that like? You know, the way J.D. Vance laid it out, I think he did a fantastic job at it. He's very, very bright, and he's able to articulate this message really clearly to the MAGA base, which is, one, Trump has been consistent on this issue for the last 10 years. This is not something that he woke up yesterday and was convinced by Bibi Netanyahu to join. That's not accurate. That's not real. That's not right. And number two is we have this, it's basically what I just said. We have the ability right now to either allow the Israelis to finish the job, allow the Iranians to come back to the table and agree to dismantle, or we could finish the job for them. The one thing that he articulated in his tweet was there's no reason for the Iranians to want to enrich uranium there unless they're going for a bomb. It was always a red line. It made no sense. And that's the one thing that he's like highlighting and saying, look, what are you talking about? What are you guys saying? We're not sending boots in. We're just ending this program, which is a nuclear program for a genocidal regime. Can't have that. So I applaud him for doing that. He did it really clearly, and he spoke straight to the base.
Golan, to your point, and I want to wrap this up, Thomas Massie, a Republican, that jackass, he's Rand Paul's doppelthinker, has introduced bipartisan legislation aiming to rein in President Trump's power when it comes to the American position on the Israel-Iran war. Goes back to what you were saying before. This is a freaking embarrassment. I didn't want to curse.
Well, I appreciate you not wanting to curse. If any time was the right time to do it, this is it. You know, the idea that Thomas Massie made this proposal, who was the first person to sign on? She made it a real public thing in her tweets. Signing on, said AOC. Signing on, said Rashida Tlaib. That's when you know you're on the right side of things, when those two are the first two to jump to your defense. This is becoming, let's just call it what it is, a civil war within the Republican Party, or even a civil war within MAGA, that we even have to have these conversations. To your point, you asked, who is this Daniel Davis guy who showed up on the show? Daniel Davis is a guy who, it reminds me of Daryl Cooper, reminds me of Ian Carroll, the guys that Joe Rogan was platforming, super non-interventionist. This is a guy who is part of the Defense Priorities think tank, which is all about non-intervention. He hosts a podcast just like those guys. By the way, this is the guy that Tulsi Gabbard almost hired as her senior intelligence officer. So this is a group of people that all are aligned on one side of the equation, cautioning against military escalation when, again, as men pointed out, boots on the ground have not been uttered, not even once, by this administration, only by people who are trying to make it look bad. These are the same people that are debunking the claims of Israeli air superiority and trying to make Israel look bad, or trying to claim they're going to fail any second. And by the way, you can go online right now, go on X, You can find a whole host of people that are anti-Israel, that are pretending like Iran is super winning this war. And even now, even as Trump is writing unconditional surrender, as Trump is writing, we have complete control over the skies, as Trump is writing, we know where you are, motherfucker, but we won't kill you right now, but maybe you should make a deal. As they're writing that, they're still saying, I think Israel doesn't really have that much superiority, and this is still a fair fight. We'll see what happens. It's all ludicrous.
Can you do me a favor, please? Because there are a lot of our listeners that don't know all the people's names we're talking about, and we often assume they're wonks like us. So just explain to people who Daryl Cooper is.
So Daryl Cooper is a guy who claims that he's not a historian, but he runs a podcast that is distorted history, and he has a pretty big following. I am surprised that Jocko is the backer of Daryl Cooper. So Jocko Willink is a Navy SEALs, special forces guy. He fought, he ran teams, he kicked ass. He's an American hero, and he's backing this Daryl Cooper, who's just a revisionist history, distorting information, and very vehemently anti-Israel. Like, I don't care if you're pro anything, but to be anti that one country, the one democracy over there is just, it's a tell. It's an immediate tell that something's off with this person. So I was surprised that Jocko's still sticking by this guy. There is one other thing I wanted to mention before we wrap this up, and that is Amit Segel of Yediot Ahronot. It's a newspaper in Israel, was on Dan Senor's podcast, and he talked about how the Israelis managed to kill all of the IRGC, which is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard unit, their Air Force top commanders. And the reason that they needed to kill them in the beginning of the war was because these were the guys that were going to give the command to launch 1,000 ballistic missiles at Israel. And Israel couldn't have that happen. So they spent a lot of time infiltrating that network. At the right time, they convinced them through some sort of phone op that they needed to go to the bunker. They all ran to the bunker, and Israel blew that thing up and killed and took out all the top guys. So there was nobody to give the command to launch the 1,000 rockets or missiles. And at the same time, Israel had their drone factories inside Iran take out a lot of the mobile launching units. So it really changed the game. It changed the trajectory of this war. It was a fantastic Mossad app. This is something that they're going to make movies about. This entire war is going to be documented. It's unprecedented what the Israelis managed to pull off in 4 days.
Golan, as we're wrapping up, Mend has brought up a great point. This isn't about Trump. This is about Western civilization. If the West is not strong, this is what happens. And we had lack of leadership for 4 years where the world went on fire. I'm not okay with that. And right now, as a country, we're at an inflection point. All of us, red, blue, whatever the hell you say you are, and say what is right and what is wrong. And right now we have a president that is standing up for right. And it's not easy for him to do. He knows that doing this will hurt his base, and he knows this comes with a cost. And he's willing to say what he's saying at that risk. That is courage under pressure. That is courage under fire. And anybody that questions his courageousness, his morality, is out of their fucking mind. Excuse my language.
We finally got Judah to step up to the F word. Look, we finally have leadership. It's something that you and Mend and I have said over and over and over again. And the funny thing is, of course, now some of the loudest complainers about that leadership are supposedly on his side of the aisle. But that is not stopping him. And in a lot of cases, a lot of weaker leaders, it would have stopped. People in their own party pushing back. That's how we got 4 years of victimhood Olympics. Because I will say, I know ultimately how we all feel about where Biden ended up. But there were things Biden was doing at the beginning of his tenure that I thought, whoa, I'm surprised. All right, a little bit of a backbone, willing to stand up for what's right and this and that. And little by little, I watched him just melt into the same old empty suit, mouthing platitudes, giving all the same buzzwords that the woke left wanted him to say. And it would be very easy right now, very easy for Trump to just kowtow to the woke right in his party and start to fall into the weakness that Washington is so well known for. But instead, he's saying, no, Tucker's one of the most popular people on that side of the aisle, for better or for worse. And Trump just put out a truth not long ago calling him Kooky Tucker, right? Tell him, what do you not realize why it's not a good idea for Iran to have a bomb, you schmuck, right? So if Trump's willing to do that, and we know, Judah and I were having this conversation just earlier today, that we were surprised by Trump putting out a truth like that on Truth Social, on his own platform, the president of the United States, the leader of the party, and the comments underneath it were not all positive, weren't all rah, rah, yay, let's go Trump. A lot of them were, what are you talking about? How are we
80%,
intervening?
80% go on.
I didn't even realize it was that high. I think maybe you told me and I blocked it because, wow.
I was literally, just so you know, I was trying to scroll down to find positive comments. He had a bunch of retweets and likes on it, but the comment sections, which were in the thousands, were just as brutal as a person could get. And God bless him.
This is against Trump. And by the way, half of those people are the same people who cheered the same Trump on for bombing the hell out of ISIS and now are flinching when he draws red lines on Iran. Again, without boots on the ground. Leadership ultimately isn't about emotional purity. It isn't about kowtowing to your base. It isn't about making the craziest people in your party happy. It's about actual leadership. This is a man who actually is doing it. And even the people who don't like him have to recognize that he's doing it. Even if they disagree with how he's doing it, or disagree with the fact that he truths too much, or disagree with this, that, or the other thing, they recognize that at least this man has a backbone and a spine and is willing to stand up for what he feels is right and then go for a goal. And that's exactly what he's doing, regardless of anybody else.
Okay, men, last point of the day. And to quote the late, great Chris Matthews, I got chills down my leg when I read this. Trump just posted a little bit ago. All he wrote was unconditional surrender, exclamation point.
Trump also said that we have complete air superiority over Iran. He didn't say the Israelis. He said we. And we means the free world. So Trump is not looking for a Band-Aid. He's not looking to give them time to regroup with a ceasefire. He's saying, listen, I gave you 60 days. I offered you a lot of incentives to get there. You couldn't get there. You guys were jerking me off. Now this is where we're at. And if you want it to end, you got to surrender unconditionally. And that's how wars end. If you don't want to have a festering war that goes on for 60, 70 years, you make it end. One side must surrender, just like the Japanese did in World War II. A side needs to surrender. In this case, it's the Iranians, and all their little proxies will collapse. That's how this ends. It's actually a momentous time in our history where we're seeing something that's been festering since 1979 come to an end. Free the people of Iran.
And I will say one last thing about this. I know that we have kind of hit on this topic of the woke right and the fracture within the MAGA movement a lot over the past few days. And it is intentional. Okay. I know we've been receiving some comments. Why do you keep talking about this? It's important because this isn't just some like quirky Twitter subculture or just on podcasts or anything like that. It is a real problem. It's a self-inflicted wound within the party, inside the conservative movement right now, and it could actually derail the leadership that we finally have. So if we don't deal with it, we are going to be in real trouble. We spent years, whether it was before Trump or in between Trumps, begging for strength and vision and a spine. And now Trump is showing that with clear, unapologetic leadership. And if we don't support that, if we don't say we are behind you, if suddenly a whole wing of this so-called new right or whatever you want to call it, barnstormer Nazi right, is clutching its pearls because the grown-ups didn't ask their permission to do something, then that's not leadership. And he is luckily pushing back against it, as we said, but it needs to be dealt with. That's why we keep talking.
You know, it's like everything else that he did. Let's talk about the tariffs for a second. And everybody, you know, their heads exploded and said, oh, he's going to ruin the economy and everything else. He pushed through. He's getting it done, and the results are in the pudding, right? So we're seeing inflation come down. There's trillions of dollars being invested in the U.S. So he just tuned that stuff out, and he knew it needed to be done, and he went with it. And I think he's doing the same thing here. He knows what needs to be done, regardless of what Tucker and the other clowns say. He's just getting it done. This thing is going to come to an end within 2 weeks. Within a couple of weeks, the Iranians will either capitulate, they will give in, or they're going to be bombed out of existence. So it's going to be over. And what are the ramifications of bombing? Let's even say that America does drop the Moab on that mountain in Isfahan or Fordow. There's nothing that they could do to us. What do they have? They have sleeper agents here in the US that are going to do attacks. They're already here. They came in under Biden. So it's not like we're going to stave off those things. They're going to do that stuff anyway. We need to get them out. That's the whole immigration crackdown and the criminals, getting rid of them. So this is going to come to a peaceful resolution very soon. There's going to be peace and prosperity in the Middle East like nothing we've ever seen.
On that note, I want everybody to please fact check everything we have just said. I also encourage everybody to Google images of Iran in 1976 or 1966 and see what that great country looked like then, and see what it turned into by 1980. I encourage everybody to do that. And sometimes we have to fight for what's right. It's not easy, it sucks, and it's painful. But this is the right thing to do, not just for Israel, but for the Western world. They need to see that the United States is back and will protect not just its allies, but the world. And thank you, everybody, very much for all the downloads on Apple, on Spotify. Go to us on YouTube at The Daily Cheat Sheet, Substack, The Daily Cheat Sheet, and of course on X at TD Cheat Sheet. On that note, just God bless this world, and God bless America, and God bless Israel. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, world, wherever you are. Let's have a little bit of laughs in these serious times. We'll talk to y'all later.